Yarin Adams had been on the Alari medical station for 22 days, and he still wasn't used to the way the floor hummed under his boots. The ship was massive, rotating slowly above the blue-gold gas giant Virith and filled with all manner of medical technologies that made Earth's hospitals look like antique shops. There were 6 alien species working aboard, each with their own branch of medicine, each convinced no one else really knew what they were doing. And then there was Yarin, the Earth liaison, with a clipboard, a coffee mug, and a permanent squint of confusion. He was walking down corridor Theta 9, sipping his still-too-hot coffee, when he coughed. It wasn't a dramatic cough, just a quick, involuntary splutter. Water had gone down the wrong pipe. He paused, tapped his chest, coughed again, and muttered, "Geez, I just choked on water." A shrill alarm blared through the corridor. "Emergency respiratory failure detected in human subject," a voice screeched from the overhead comms. Before Yarin could say anything, a panel in the wall hissed open and a medical pod shot out, slamming to a halt beside him. The translucent dome hissed open and a series of mechanical arms reached out, grabbing at his limbs. "What the hell? I'm fine," Yarin yelped, backing away. A towering alien doctor, Gorlix, came skittering around the corner. Gorlix was from the Drexery, a species with bioluminescent plates along their sides and an obsession with erring on the side of overreaction. "Do not resist, Yarin," Gorlix shouted, eyes wide. "We must stabilize your lung function immediately." I choked on water. That's it. 2 more Drexery medics appeared, each carrying a tray of surgical tools. "You are exhibiting acute spasms of the thorax. This is consistent with terminal collapse of the breathing structures in humans," Gorlix insisted. "No, it's not." Yarin waved his arms. "It's called coughing. It happens. It's normal. You drink water too fast and forget it. Just listen." Gorlix pointed toward the pod. "Your oxygen saturation may already be plummeting. We must intubate." Yarin took a step back. "You try to stick a tube down my throat, I will throw this coffee at you." The medics froze. Gorlix blinked. "Is that a threat?" "No, it's a warning. Because I'm not going in that pod. I just need a second to breathe. You are breathing in short bursts. This must be compensated for by assisted ventilation." "I'm breathing like a guy who just coughed," Yarin said. "Look, watch." He took a deep breath in, then out. "See? Breathing. Lungs working. No surgery needed." Gorlix tilted his head. "You are certain this was not the onset of systemic respiratory shutdown?" "I'm sure." The Drexery stared at him a moment longer, then finally waved off the medics. The surgical pod begrudgingly retracted into the wall. Yarin rubbed his temples. "You know, on Earth, we don't call an ambulance when someone coughs." "You should," Gorlix muttered. "You are far more fragile than you admit." Yarin rolled his eyes. "And yet I'm still standing." He turned and walked off, still holding his coffee. Gorlix followed, scribbling something on his data pad. "I must log this as a near-fatal event. Your pulmonary structures may have suffered micro-damage." "They didn't. We will monitor you overnight." "No, you won't." But later that evening, as he sat in his room, trying to watch a rerun of some pre-war Earth sitcom, his door opened without a chime. A small floating orb drifted in, scanning him from head to toe. "Vitals stable," it said in a cheerful chirp. Yarin threw a pillow at it. The orb zipped back out. The next morning, Gorlix was waiting outside the cafeteria with a new chart. "I have scheduled a precautionary bronchoscopy." Yarin stopped mid-bite of his eggs. "You're not sticking anything down my throat. It is a non-invasive procedure." "No, it's not. I will instruct the probe to be gentle." Yarin stood up. "Gorlix, listen to me. I appreciate the concern. Really. But humans cough. We sneeze. Sometimes we even hiccup. It doesn't mean we're dying. It just means we're alive." Gorlix frowned. "You also bleed easily, and break bones, and ingest poisons recreationally. That's fair." Later that week, a new human arrived, Dr. Brynja Oakley, a researcher from Seattle. She was assigned to study comparative immune responses between species, and she had a habit of asking too many questions. Yarin met her in the lab while she was arguing with a Corellan pathologist about the human lymph system. "You must possess internal sacs of fluid to neutralize pathogens?" the Corellan asked, confused. Brynja nodded. "Yeah, lymph nodes. They swell up when we get sick. It's normal." "Swelling is not normal." "It is for us." Yarin leaned against the wall. "Get used to it. Everything we do is apparently life-threatening." Brynja grinned. You must be Yarin. And you must be the second most confusing thing to happen to these aliens after me. They shook hands. The next few days were quiet until the incident in the hydroponics lab. Yarin was helping calibrate nutrient levels when he slipped on a puddle of condensation and fell hard. Pain exploded in his right wrist. He cursed, clutching it. Brynja rushed over. Let me see. He held up the wrist. Feels like I might have sprained it. She gently pressed along the joint. You've probably fractured it. Let's get a scan. The Drexery were on him before he could move. Severe trauma to support limb detected. One of them shouted. Prep Surgical Suite 3, another called. I haven't even had a scan yet. Yarin yelled. A portable scanner was shoved against his arm. Non-displaced fracture of the distal radius, Brynja confirmed. No surgery needed. Just immobilization. Incorrect. Gorlix countered. Bone must be reinforced with synthetic lattice to prevent collapse. Yarin groaned. We have cast for this. You encase the limb in a rigid shell and wait? Yes. That is barbaric. It works. The Drexery argued for 15 solid minutes before reluctantly agreeing to let Brynja set and immobilize the wrist herself with a Drexery observer taking notes. Recovery took 6 weeks. Yarin wore a cast, did physical therapy, and followed instructions. He didn't try to act tough. He just wanted to heal. By the time he was cleared, the Drexery had added over 300 pages to their human medical protocols. Then came the conference. Representatives from 14 species were present. Yarin was asked to give a short talk on human resilience. He stepped up to the podium with a stack of notes and a cup of water. Halfway through his speech, he took a sip. It went down the wrong way. He coughed. 3 Drexery bolted upright. Medical emergency. Get the pod. Yarin held up a hand, wheezing. Do not move. I just choked on water. The room fell silent. Yarin took a breath. Okay. I'm fine. See? No need for drama. A Freelian ambassador raised a hand. You nearly expired from fluid inhalation, yet you continue your speech? It happens. We recover. Brynja, watching from the side, shook her head. You're going to give them ulcers. Do they even have ulcers? No, but you'll invent them. After the conference, Gorlix approached Yarin with a new datapad. I have revised our emergency response protocols. Yarin glanced at the screen. Section 1. Differentiate between choking and coughing. Good start, he said. Section 2. Do not initiate surgical prep without verbal confirmation of distress from the patient. Even better. And Section 3. Humans may consume liquids without immediate supervision. Yarin laughed. Progress. Gorlix stared at him. You are still the most medically confusing organism I have ever met. You should see us when we get the flu. Gorlix shuddered. Yarin turned to leave, sipping his water. He coughed again. Gorlix tensed. Yarin raised a finger. Don't even think about it. 3 weeks after the conference incident, Yarin found himself seated on a low examination platform in Medbay 13, one of the quieter wings of the Yulari station. His left ankle was propped up on a cushion of temperature-sensitive gel, and a Lervian physician with 2 mini fingers was poking it with a diagnostic stylus. Each prod triggered a faint blue pulse on the screen behind them. I told you, Yarin said. It's not a sprain. I just stepped weird getting out of the lift. The floor dipped. The Lervian clicked its inner mandibles together, considering. There is no documented floor instability in that corridor. Well, maybe there is now. The stylus jabbed a particularly sore spot. Yarin flinched. Muscle fibers exhibit minor strain, no connective rupture. The Lervian stated, tapping a few symbols on its wristband. You will not require limb suspension. Good, Yarin muttered. Because last time, I needed 10 minutes just to convince Gorlix not to sedate me over a paper cut. You humans frequently underreport discomfort. No, we just don't report every stubbed toe like it's a medical emergency. Without turning, the Lervian responded, your species has a statistically abnormal tolerance for untreated injuries. This is often mistaken for resilience. Yarin glanced at the screen. You mean we're stubborn? That is one interpretation. He exhaled through his nose, watching the Lervian wrap a lightweight support strip around his ankle with fluid precision. It hardened just enough to hold shape but flexed as he moved. He bent his foot experimentally. So I'm not dying? Not from this. Great. The door to Medbay 13 slid open with a hiss, and a new figure stepped in. She was roughly Yarin's height, with a long, translucent gown that shimmered like oil on water and a cluster of optical nodes embedded in a crest along her elongated skull. A Varellan. Rare on the station. She spoke with a tone that sounded like two overlapping voices. I am Dr. Seema. You were recently involved in a biomechanical interface malfunction. Yarin blinked. I was. Your medical record indicates a misalignment event involving the station's inertial compensator and your lower limb. This qualifies as a biomechanical interface malfunction. I tripped. I see. She crossed the room in 2 gliding steps, her movements too smooth to track properly. She stared at Yarin's ankle. You did not request neuroinhibitors. It's not that bad. Your pain threshold is being monitored. It is abnormal. Welcome to humanity. Seema tilted her head. I have begun a study on pain perception across species. I would like to include you. What would that involve? Exposure to controlled stimuli and real-time feedback analysis. So, being poked with increasingly uncomfortable things while you watch my face? Correct. I'll think about it. The Lervian physician backed away, its work complete. Seema took its place, now less focused on the ankle and more on the rest of him. You were observed ingesting capsaicin extract voluntarily last soul cycle. It was hot sauce. You willingly consumed a chemical irritant. It was on a burrito. You experienced visible distress and continued consumption. Because it tasted good. Seema paused. I do not understand. Yarin shrugged. We like things that hurt if they also taste good. It's a balance. Pain is not meant to be recreational. Then you've never had wasabi. Seema's crest dimmed slightly, a sign Yarin had learned of confusion rather than anger. You also expose your skin to ultraviolet radiation for aesthetic reasons. Sunbathing, yeah. And you prioritize visual symmetry over functionality when selecting reproductive partners. Okay, now you're just critiquing Tinder. Seema stepped back. I will submit a formal request for pain tolerance testing. You may decline. I'll read the forms. She glided out without further comment. The Lervian followed, leaving Yarin alone with the software of sterilization vents. Later that rotation, around second rest period, Yarin decided to stretch his legs. The station's arboretum was the closest thing to Earth's forest this far from Seoul, and he often walked there when he needed to decompress. The artificial gravity was slightly lower, which made his ankle feel better, and the humidity helped his sinuses adjust to the dry air in the medical wing. He passed 2 cetarians arguing over pollen exposure thresholds near the ferns and ducked into a side path lined with bioluminescent moss. Brynja was already there, crouched beside a patch of fungus with a scanner in one hand and a stylus in the other. You missed the excitement, she said without looking up. I'm still recovering from the last round. An Alari technician tried to replicate human endorphin release by injecting himself with dopamine analogs. That sounds safe. He passed out and woke up convinced he was a toaster. Yarin leaned against a tree. I thought they didn't even have a concept of euphoria. They do now. Brynja stood and brushed her palms on her lab coat. You limping? Minor ankle thing. It's fine. She narrowed her eyes. You didn't take the pain suppressors, did you? I didn't need them. You're going to end up being dissected for stubbornness. He raised an eyebrow. Seema already asked to test my pain response. She asked me too. I told her no. What? You don't want to get jabbed with needles for science. I already did that during my residency. They walked together for a while. The arboretum lights dimmed as the station's cycle moved into simulated dusk. It was quiet enough to hear the soft clicks of insects, imported from Earth for pollination testing. A few minutes later, a small maintenance drone zipped past overhead, chirping something about a humidity leak. Yarin ducked instinctively. You ever feel like this whole place is one misunderstood sneeze away from full lockdown? He asked. Brynja nodded. I got swabbed for pathogens last week because I yawned during a staff meeting. They passed a group of Drexery interns seated in a circle, studying a holographic diagram of the human spine. One of them glanced up and quickly looked away. Yarin sighed. I think they're still convinced I'm going to collapse in public again. They filed a new protocol after your last incident. Something about preemptive oxygen deployment. I just needed a minute to clear my throat. You're a case study now. Back in his quarters later that evening, Yarin sat on the edge of his bunk and flexed his ankle. The support wrap was already loosening, designed to dissolve after a few cycles. He looked over at the small shelf where he kept a few personal items, photos, a cracked watch, a tiny plastic dinosaur someone had mailed him as a joke. His terminal chimed. A message from Gorlix. Preliminary data from your recent fall indicates a potential flaw in inertial dampening matrices. Please report to engineering for calibration assistance. Yarin stared at it. It was a trip, but he got up anyway. Engineering was 2 levels down. The moment he entered, a short, plum-colored being with 6 eyes and no visible nose waved him over. You are the human who destabilized the corridor? I walked funny. That's it. We have recalibrated the floor panels to compensate for bipedal gait anomalies. Please walk across this mat. What happens if I refuse? You will continue receiving recalibration summons every rotation. He walked. The mat lit up in segments as he stepped. A holographic representation of his gait appeared above a console. Note the asymmetry, the technician said. Your left foot strikes at an inconsistent angle. I hurt my ankle. That explains the deviation. Glad we solved that. They made him walk it 3 more times. Then they adjusted the floor. As he left, he overheard 2 engineers debating whether human footwear caused seismic spikes. Back in his quarters, the lights dimmed to sleep mode. Yarin lay back, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't sure if he was really adapting, or if the station was just slowly bending itself around him like a ship hull under pressure. Either way, he was still here. Still standing. Still coughing at inopportune times. He closed his eyes. And somewhere, a directory updated a file labeled Human Incident Log Ongoing. Yarin sat on the edge of Diagnostic Bay 12 with a metal basin under his left foot, lukewarm saline swirling around a bright red gash across his heel. The basin had been fetched by a Sarin orderly who barely came up to Yarin's waist and had refused to make eye contact since delivering it. Across from him, a tall, angular alien with a translucent carapace, Dr. Trelk of the Harthic delegation was examining the wound with a narrow beam of light that pulsed green whenever it passed over exposed dermal tissue. How did this occur? Trelk asked, antennae flicking in slow, deliberate arcs. I stepped on a shard of glass, Yarin said. In the kitchen. I dropped a mug. You mean you shattered a containment vessel and then exposed yourself to its debris? It was a coffee mug. There are redundant containment protocols for that. It was ceramic, not a weapon, and I didn't realize a piece landed on the floor. Trelk dipped a long, clawed finger into the basin and lifted it out, inspecting the diluted blood. You continued walking afterward? I didn't notice until I left a trail across the corridor. Trelk blinked both sets of eyelids. You were actively hemorrhaging and failed to initiate an emergency response. It was a shallow cut. Blood was visibly escaping your body. That's what happens when skin breaks. Trelk turned to the console beside him, tapping out a few commands. You are missing approximately 15 milliliters of blood. That is nearly 1% of your total volume. That's not even close. It is if you are a carum larva. I'm not. Trelk's antennae twitched again. You must be immobilized while we sterilize and fuse the wound. The risk of microbial infiltration is considerable. I already cleaned it with antiseptic. Which one? Isopropyl alcohol. Trelk froze. You applied solvent to exposed tissue? That's what we do. Voluntarily. Yarin nodded. Did it hurt? Yes. Then why did you proceed? So it wouldn't get infected. Trelk stared at him. Your species is a paradox. I get that a lot. The Harthic doctor motioned to the assistant, who returned with a tray of instruments and a small scanning wand. Trelk ran the wand over the wound, which emitted a soft chirp and displayed a 3-dimensional image of Yarin's heel on the overhead screen. It looked worse in large, ragged edges, embedded fragments, a thin trail of blood tracing toward the arch. Foreign material remains, Trelk said. We will extract and seal. Yarin leaned back as the doctor activated a narrow probe and inserted it into the wound. A sharp sting made him wince. You did not request numbing agent, Trelk said, not looking up. I didn't think it would be necessary. You are experiencing pain. Yeah, but it's manageable. Trelk paused, setting down the probe. Does the pain serve a purpose? It tells me something's wrong. Yet you already know something is wrong. Still helps me track when it gets better. You use pain as a diagnostic feedback loop? It's not exactly optional. Trelk tapped one claw on the tray. Our species eliminated nociceptors 4 evolutionary cycles ago. Must be nice. No, it created other problems. Yarin raised an eyebrow. We were unable to detect internal errors. Many members expired silently. Now we rely entirely on external sensors. Trust me, Yarin muttered, we notice our errors right away. Trelk resumed the extraction, this time inserting a microfilament to sweep out remaining fragments. Yarin gripped the edge of the table but didn't move. You are not vocalizing distress, Trelk noted. I've had worse. What surpasses this? Stepped on a sea urchin once. Spines went straight into my foot. Took hours to get them out. Trelk paused. You encountered a terrestrial organism designed to impale and continue locomotion? I was 12. I thought it was a pine cone. Trelk was silent for several seconds. Then he sealed the wound with a dermal film that hissed faintly as it bonded to the skin. You must avoid pressure for 2 cycles. I'll limp. I recommend elevation and limited movement. Already planning on it. Trelk handed him a narrow, flexible boot. This will distribute weight and shield the wound from further stress. Yarin pulled it on and flexed his toes. Feels like a compression sock. It is designed to simulate your epidermal tension. We copied it from earlier scans. Thanks. Trelk stood straighter. You are cleared to leave. But you must report if the wound changes color, swells, or emits odor. I know the drill. As Yarin pushed himself off the table, the assistant stepped forward and offered a small vial. What's this? He asked. Sample of your blood, Trelk said. For comparative analysis. You think it's different? Your clotting speed was anomalously high. Could be the caffeine. Trelk nodded once. I will notify you if we discover anything lethal. Comforting. He left the bay and limped toward the lift. Midway down the corridor, he passed a pair of Varellans having a rapid, whispered debate in their dual-voiced language. One of them fell silent as he walked by, watching his gait with a mixture of curiosity and concern. By the time he reached his quarters, the support boot had adjusted to his stride. He poured himself a glass of water, sat on the edge of his bunk, and elevated his foot on a nearby crate. The wound throbbed mildly beneath the dermal film. Brynja buzzed in a few minutes later, holding a container of sliced fruit and a data pad. I heard you bled on the floor near the galley, she said, setting both items on his desk. You okay? Fine. Just a cut. You left a perfect trail from the sink to the lift. I didn't notice it until I sat down. Brynja pulled the chair around and sat facing him. They're probably rewriting the floor cleaning protocols. I think I broke Trelk's understanding of pain. He tried to convince me that headaches were spinal malfunctions. Yarin snorted. They still think migraines are optical seizures. Brynja opened the container of fruit and offered him a piece. You should have told someone sooner. I didn't think it was serious. That's exactly why they panic. Yarin chewed. Maybe it's time we give them a human first aid guide. With pictures? Step 1. Don't sedate us for minor bleeding. Step 2. If we say ow, don't bring the surgical tray. Brynja leaned back. They're learning. Slowly. Yarin flexed his foot again. The pain had already dulled to a low ache. I guess we're just built for chaos. Or we got used to it. They sat quietly for a moment. The overhead lights dimmed slightly as the station's cycle shifted toward rest. You know, Yarin said, I think this is the first time they didn't try to knock me unconscious over a surface wound. That's progress. I'll take it. Brynja stood and stretched. You're off duty for at least 2 days. No lifting, no running, no impromptu corridor races. I'll try not to injure myself just to prove a point. She gave him a sideways glance. You know, that's actually believable. He grinned. Don't tempt me. As she left, the door slid shut behind her with a gentle click. Yarin leaned back on his bunk, foot propped, glass of water in hand. No alarms. No emergency pots. No sudden surgical intervention. Just a cut, cleaned and bandaged, and a quiet room. Maybe just maybe they were figuring each other out. One minor injury at a time.